What's going on, guys? It's the Skylander dude, and today I've made one of my most requested unreleased Skylanders customs, Template. Now, if you've never heard of this character before, I don't blame you, because Template was actually never planned to release. It was actually just that, a template for in-game uses only, pretty much. When building Swap Force, Vicarious Visions quickly whipped up this very generic, basic-looking character to use as a tester for the swappers. His top half is called Template, and his bottom half is also called Template, and I assume they just use this to test the swapping features in and outside of the game. And this character is only accessible through the files of Swap Force, Superchargers, or Imaginators. So because this is literally an unfinished test character, I decided to go with the magic swapper base from this broken trap shadow here, just because it's the most simplistic swapper base and Template doesn't have an official element. I also wanted to make this custom actually physically swap, so I first tested out some cheap small magnets, but those were way too weak and couldn't hold the weight of a Skylander. So instead, I went ahead and removed the magnets from a damaged blast zone I had, and while I was at it, I went ahead and removed its NFC tags. That way I can reconnect the wires and still have it function as something in the game. So now I'm building up the skeleton of Template with some aluminum foil here before I go in and wrap it all in clay. And the pose I'm actually following here is from the only physical prototype I could find of a Template physical toy. So as I'm covering these with clay, I actually use the magnets from the blast zone as a placeholder. I wrap those up with clay and then just pop those out before I toss this in the oven to harden. Then I continue to build up the clay to define his shoes, his pants, his knees, everything I need to make this as accurate as possible to the character in the game. Now, because I'm utilizing the magnets from the blast zone, I had to make his waist and the bottom of his torso a little bit wider just so it can fit compatibly with other swapper characters as well. Because I'd need to be rethreading that wire from his NFC tag back up to the magnets through his leg, the original idea was I would be able to take out the aluminum foil from his leg once the clay has hardened. When I tried to do that, as you can see, the leg completely cracked. It was just too thin around there. So I have to go back in, fill in all the cracks with clay, just so I can keep that leg completely hollow and I can rethread the wire through at the end when I'm ready to glue everything together. And now I'm building up the top half of Template here with green. The color of clay doesn't really matter because it's all going to get repainted the correct colors anyways. And as I'm building up the head here, I did my best to get those angles of his face right. He has a kind of like a weird shaped head, and it took me a while, but I think I did alright. Then I pressed some indents for his eyes and then made little circles to fill them in. Then of course did all the details like his nose, eyebrows, etc. Then I went ahead and baked that whole figure and then went back in to do his fingers. I made the fingers too small the first time, so I had to go back in, make them larger. His closed fist is almost the same size as his head, which is really funny. But here are the two halves, all baked and ready to be painted. I started with the magic base and used some painter's tape as a handle, so I'm painting the whole thing this light gray color. I thought light gray would be a good representation of just some bland template version of a base that isn't supposed to have any particular element. Then I went ahead and mixed together the perfect green for Template's skin. He has kind of like this light olive green, so I mixed some browns and reds in with the green, and it came out with this almost perfect color. I went and painted his face, his arms, his hands, and did a few coats of that. Then for the bottom half, I went in and painted his tail first. He has this bright blue tail, which is different from the color of his pants, which is a much lighter blue. Then next up, I mixed together the purple he has for his shirt. I think it's so funny that he has literally just a t-shirt on, just the most least detailed Skylander. Obviously, he's not supposed to be detailed, he's not meant to be released, but it's just funny to see him with just a plain t-shirt on. But I went in with a few coats of that purple to keep it nice and vibrant like it is in the game. This same purple is actually used for his eyebrows, so I painted those as well. Then I went back to his bottom half and mixed up that light blue color for his pants, and of course did a few coats of it to keep it vibrant. I then went back into the base with a black wash so it can pull out the shadows and crevices within it. It made it look more dirty and roughed up as if it's not supposed to be a released character. Or at least that was my thought process behind it. So I'm going in with this very thinned out black and wiping out almost all of it leaving only the pools that seeped into the cracks. Then on top of it all, I mixed together a much lighter gray to use as a dry brush to pull out the highlights in this base. That way this thing has a lot of depth, which I wasn't able to do with the actual figure because it's not meant to have any sort of color to it. It's really just this very plain, simple character in the game, and that's what I want to represent in the figure as well. Then I covered up that Sneak logo in gold, but I still decided to keep that badge there because even though Template doesn't really have an ability, I thought leaving that gold badge in the middle of the base would still look good and match the other swappers. Then I painted his bright white eyes and mixed together a very dark gray for his shoes, what I think is a belt. He kind of has this thin line between his waist that separates his top and bottom half in the game, but I'm just going to call that a belt because I'm not sure what else it would be. Then I went in and painted his light brown eyes, tried to keep the irises as circular as possible, made them as smooth as possible. So it took me a long time, and you can see that it kind of is going out of focus because I have my eyes so close to the figure. That's because I wanted to make it as best as I could. Finally, I gave him some black pupils, and that was everything painted. Now it was time to glue and solder everything together. I started by kind of reconstructing the base so that way I can fit the wires through and then shove them through his legs, which was kind of difficult, but eventually with some shimmying, I got there. Then once the wires came out of his bottom half, I went and soldered that part to the bottom half magnet. I underestimated how difficult that would be to solder, so don't judge my soldering job. I'm not a professional, but it got the job done and it still works. So then I opened back up the base to glue it together. Then I went in and glued the magnet to the inside of his bottom half and glued his feet down to the base as well. Then all that was left was to glue the top magnet into Template using the bottom of Trap Shadow as a guide, and that's it. Here is the finished Template custom Skylander figure. I figured I'd take out just another swapper here. I got Gorilla Drill it to show off that it is indeed compatible with other swappers. It looks a little funny, but it does work. But it's not just a functioning toy. Here's me placing on the portal to show that it still registers as Blast Zone in the game.
Blast and Furious!
I hope you enjoyed this custom swappable figure of Template, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Peace.